Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for EMBCA's Hellenic American Athletics and AHEPA, a glorious history webinar panel discussion in association with AHEPA. My name is Lou Katsos, EMBCA's president and AHEPA National Hellenic Cultural Commission chairman. Today's panel discussion will be moderated by our good friend, attorney, AHEPA Athletics Award Selection Committee chairman, Gregory J. Stamos. Our distinguished panel includes educator, co-author, radio announcer, sports editor, Nick Tsiotos, former sports executive, athletic director of Temple University, Charles Theokas, journalist, sports writer, and columnist, Terry Poulos, an executive wealth advisor, certified financial planner, AHEPA Supreme Athletic Director, Chris Atsavas. Hellenic American athletes have attained success on the playing fields in accomplishments and acclaim far greater than one would expect, reaching the heights of their sports. Tennis, Peter Sampras; hockey, Chelios; NFL's Karras; baseball's Bellinger, Karros and Pappas; the great Olympian Greg Louganis. The success of the Hellenic athlete has assisted the Hellenic immigrant to assimilate into the American mainstream and feel worthy, and is certainly exemplified by the Hellenic American tragedy of the iconic Harry Agganis, whose family immigrated from Longanikos in Laconia. The American Hellenic Educational Progressive Association has both complemented and supported and spearheaded the success and accomplishments of the Hellenic American athlete. This panel discussion program shall both illuminate and illustrate the remarkable feats of these athletes while highlighting the crucial role of AHEPA in nurturing and publicizing these sports luminaries. If we can, Costa, just give us some of the images of these great Hellenic American luminaries. I would like now to introduce our moderator for today's program, attorney, AHEPA Athletic Award Selection Committee Chairman, Gregory J. Stamos, and someone known to many of us. Greg has been an attorney for more than 4 decades and the founder of the Connecticut Hellenic Lawyers Association. He is an archon in the Order of St. Andrew the Apostle of the Ecumenical Patriarch in America, as well as past parish council president of St. Barbara's Hellenic Orthodox Church in Orange, Connecticut, where my daughter used to go to church, Greg, when she was at Yale. Greg has served as the past Supreme Counselor in the Order of AHEPA and has been the chairman of its National Athletics Award program for more than a decade. He is a huge sports fan. Final Fours, NBA Finals, World Series, Athens Olympics, Wimbledon. He has served in numerous civic capacities, which include corporator for both the Boys and Girls Club of the Lower Valley and Griffin Hospital, chairman of the board of directors for Valley United Way, and for the city of Ansonia as a member of the Historic District Commission and chairman of the Housing Authority. He has served on the board of directors for the Valley YMCA, Binghamton Mental Health Center, now BH Care, and notable was a former board chair for the Valley Community Foundation and serves on its boards. A Gold Seal Award recipient presented by the Greater Valley Chamber of Commerce for civic contributions, Greg has additionally been recognized as a Valley YMCA Volunteer of the Year. He is a graduate of the University of Connecticut and Villanova Law School. Welcome, Greg, and thank you for moderating today's panel.
Thank you very much, Lou. You just wasted a lot of precious time, I have to tell you.
No, I love to say what's happening. You're a great person, and you'll be a great moderator. Thank you, Greg.
Putting stuff out of Lou. This is really, really wonderful. You know, we applaud you for the great work you do. And I have to admit that usually, at least ostensibly, these seminars, these webinars are on slightly weightier topics such as Cyprus and the Parthenon marbles and Greek citizenship. But this little singular panel here likes to think that athletics has played a huge outsized role in the Greek American experience. And I think that is really our goal in this next hour or so, to sort of illuminate the tremendous accomplishments of the Hellenic American athlete. And well beyond the demographics, beyond our small percentages, we've reached the highest points and the highest pinnacles. And integral to that really has been the Order of AHEPA, which of course has just celebrated its centennial. And really, AHEPA has nurtured the Greek American athlete. It's really advanced the importance of athletics as a gateway into AHEPA, into the Greek Orthodox community, and most importantly, into assimilating into American society. Not to be overlooked. That is very important. I think that's a great segue. And by the way, thank you to Costa for those beautiful images. I know one caught my eye, the Harry Agganis baseball card. That was a wonderful Christmas present that I received a few short years ago. And as we progress, I think you'll all hear more about really the iconic, tragic story of the great Greek American Harry Agganis. Having said that, what greater expert on Harry Agganis than my friend Nick Tsiotos? I'm going to introduce Nick. Nick is a Bostonian, Hellene through and through. He's come up through the ranks as a tremendous basketball player at the high school, college, and professional level, played in Greece. But most importantly, there isn't an AHEPan in the country who played basketball who doesn't know the exploits of Nick and his brother Chris. As far as today, he is the expert on people like Harry Agganis. He wrote the seminal book on the tragic life of Harry Agganis. He spearheaded the raising of the funds for the Agganis statue outside of Boston University. He's a journalist. He's an author. He's a wonderful dad. And I'm really thrilled to introduce Nick Tsiotos. I'm going to ask Nick to highlight what some of us feel are a couple of the figures, the iconic Greek American, Hellenic American athletes on our particular Mount Rushmore. Let's call it our Mount Olympus. Nick, why don't you highlight a couple of the people that you feel any expert would say are right up there?
Thank you, Greg. And Lou, congratulations for your show, which is a great show that has so many followers, and it's an honor to be on with such an esteemed panel. And I'd like to start off with the original Golden Greek, and that is the great Jim Londos. But his real name was Christos Theophilou, and he was born in Koutsopodi, Greece, immigrated to the United States, to Chicago, to the Blue Island section of Chicago, and started originally in the circus, catching acrobats, and he had a tremendous physique. He got into wrestling and became a world champion between 1930 and 1946. As a matter of fact, the Greeks dominated wrestling between 1900 and 1930. There were so many Greeks that were wrestling throughout the United States. And Londos, of course, was the greatest of all, and he would wrestle 3 or 4 times a week, traveling to different cities. He's best known for his match in 1932 against another Greek, the great George Zaharias. And in 1932, they fought in Maple Leaf Gardens in front of 14,500 fans. It was the most that wrestling drew that year. And Londos beat out Zaharias, a very, very well-known George Zaharias. In 1934, Londos fought in front of 34,000 in Wrigley Field in Chicago against Strangler Lewis. And then he also fought Bronco Nagurski, where he won there. He was drawing crowds throughout the whole United States, and he was being followed by everybody. Everybody in the country knew Jim Londos, and it was cross-cultural, cross-ethnicity. In 1936, he returned back to Greece to fight, and he fought a Russian named Nikola Koryani. There were 100,000 people at the stadium, and another 50,000 they couldn't get in because there weren't enough tickets. And it was at the 1896 Olympic Stadium. And Londos, his father, actually went to the match. It was an incredible fight, but in the end, he wound up lifting the Russian up in his famous airplane spin, and he won the match in front of the entire nation. Went crazy, and that is well documented. He would go on, and as many other wrestlers, and he would work within the Greek American community. He was the original Golden Greek. He put us on the map, despite a lot that was going on at that time as new immigrants, as you mentioned, Greg, and assimilation. I just want to briefly note some of the wrestlers that were with him at that time. Costa Caveras, the Greek Lion, Tom George, the Greek Giant Killer, Gus Karras of the Karras family, John Naxos, the Greek Hercules, of course, Theodoros Betoyanis, who was George Zaharias. And there were so many more Greeks that were fighting all the way from up the low to California. And he really dominated and put us on the map. As a matter of fact, a little known fact is the fact that he made more money than Babe Ruth, who was an icon in America at that time. So Londos really put us on the map. And then
Nick, if I could jump in, wonderful. And I know you're going to talk about Harry. Just a little anecdote to illustrate the significance of Jim Londos. I had the blessed opportunity to be in the same household as a great uncle who lived to be 101, Uncle Louis, Elias. And he would tell me that in the 30s, and he was a bachelor, he and his friends would put their Sunday suits on, get on the trolley, and either go to New York City or to New Haven to see Jim Londos. And it was just so much pride in the Greek immigrant. Thank you, Nick. Why don't we segue to the great Harry Agganis?
Yeah, I will. And the other thing I just wanted to say, Londos also attracted a lot of female because he was such a handsome man. He wasn't really tall in stature. He was about 5'8", 200 pounds, but he was all muscle. And now I'd like to make a transition to Harry Agganis, the Golden Greek. I'll try to do this very quickly. We've all heard of Bo Jackson. We've heard of Deion Sanders. Well, Harry Agganis was Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders way before them. And he actually did quite a bit more than they did on the football field because he never came off the field. He played at Lynn Classical High School in Lynn, Massachusetts, where he was the quarterback. He was a deep safety. He was the punter. He kicked the extra points. He kicked the field goals. He never came off the field in high school. During his high school career, Notre Dame coach Frank Leahy called him the finest prospect he had ever seen. His teams were undefeated. His career was really highlighted in 1946 when they played Granby High School of Virginia, led by Chuck Stobbs, who went on to play with the Red Sox, at the Orange Bowl in Miami, 25,000 people. It was Lynn Classical against Granby High School. Harry had a good game. The game was tied up at 7-7, and somehow one of the Granby players stepped on his hand, and his hand was out like a grapefruit. It was really hurt, but he told the trainer not to wrap it up because he didn't want the opposing team to know he was hurt, and it was his left hand, his throwing hand. So the game was tied up 14-14. Classical was on the 20-yard line, and Harry Agganis called for a passing play. The center, this is interesting, Chippy Chaporis, Greek American, snapped the ball to Harry Agganis, who threw a 20-yard touchdown pass to Jimmy Varzakis to put Classical in the lead 21-14, and they would win the mythical national championship and got a trophy that cost $300 back in that day. And he got tremendous adulation after that game. He had 75 college offers, and he decided to go to Little Boston University to be next to his widowed mother. His dad died when he was 16 years old. At the end of his high school career, he did something that I don't think many people have done, or if anybody has done this. He was named captain of the All-American football team, high school football team, and he was also named captain of the United States baseball team as a first baseman. His basketball team also won a championship, state championship, his baseball team, and of course, his football team. Transitioning to college, I'll try to make this quickly. He had a great career at Boston University. They played great teams like the University of Maryland, Colgate, Syracuse, Miami. He played against quarterbacks like Johnny Unitas in college. He had a tremendous college career. At the end of his career, in fact, his first season, he had thrown, I think, 15 touchdown passes. He could have broken the NCAA record. He said, "Who wants to break records? Let's win games." And his career was interrupted in 1950, where he served as a U.S. Marine, came back, played at Boston University, wound up holding many records, including 15 interceptions in a single season on defense, had a 46.5-yard kicking average at Boston University. And I just want to go to one of his big games. To show you how he played against the best of the best was the North-South 1953 All-Star game, called the Blue and Gray game now. He went against the finest players in the country. He led the North to a win. He threw 2 touchdown passes that game, had 2 interceptions, had a 62-yard punt, kicked off, put it in the end zone, and then on top of it all, he had 14 tackles. At the end of the game, Red Barber called him, who was the announcer, called him the finest and the best player in the country. He was drafted #1 by the Cleveland Browns, who were world champions. Everybody was expecting him to go play for the Cleveland Browns. He turned them down, signed with the Red Sox for less money. Upon his graduation, he was given a car, and he turned around and took the car and took the money and gave it to the church, St. George. He was also given a banquet by his society, the Louganis Society. They gave him a $1,000 check. He turned around and sent it to Louganis, where I actually met players. Sent it to Louganis, buy them soccer shirts, buy them things that they would need to play soccer in the village. He was very much involved in his community. Went on with the Red Sox, had a tremendous career with the Boston Red Sox. Ted Williams thought he was going to be an all-star, and playing in his second season with the Red Sox, hitting .313. He was outstanding against the Yankees. He hit over 4. I think he hit against .362 against the Yankees, including a grand slam home run at Yankee Stadium. He was about to emerge into a superstar, and he passed away on June 27th, 1953. 1955.
Right.
And, it was a tragedy. Harry was like a hero to all Hellenes. He was like Achilles. I just want to wind it up by this. People would come down from Maine, from New Hampshire, with busloads of Greek Americans to watch Harry Agganis play. And it was a real tragedy that attracted, over 50,000 people to his wake and funeral. The entire United States was mourning and crying. It's been well documented. And without a doubt, he was the golden Greek. And I'm going to just say this one line that I read in the paper. Harry Agganis made all Greeks. At some time, we did face some prejudice. We were called dirty Greeks, but Harry Agganis made us all golden Greeks. And his name is living in infamy here in Boston as well, with Agganis Stadium, Agganis Field, Agganis Road, a statue to him at the Sports Museum of New England, as well as one in front of Boston University. Thank you, Greg.
Nick, wonderful. It should be noted, we'll come to this, that the premier AHEPA athletic award is named after Harry. And it's called the Harry Agganis Most Outstanding Athlete Award nationwide. And that encompasses Olympians, college, professional. And that is really the marquee award at the annual AHEPA athletic luncheon. To me, Harry's on the Mount Rushmore, but it's almost Shakespearean. It's almost the potential unrealized, because we'll never truly know how great he could have been. To pass away for an embolism at age 25 is really tragic. But very nice summary, Nick. Talking about the Mount Rushmore, as I said, the Mount Olympus. I think another name that surely would be on there was the great Alex Karras, who pleased every Greek recently when he finally, after decades, was elected to the Canton National Football League Hall of Fame last year. And AHEPA played a role in that. And I'm going to turn this over to Terry Poulos, who is the Alex Karras expert. Terry is from Chicago. He is the founder of the SportsIndex.com. He's also a 20-year employee of the NFL, working on instant replays. And as a consequence, he earned the Super Bowl ring in 2015, which he could flash maybe. He's a 20-year sports columnist for the Greek Star newspaper, and he's the publisher of GreeksInSports.com. Terry, thank you. Would you tell us about the great, iconic Alex Karras?
Hello. Thank you for having me on this panel, Greg, and Mr. Katsos and everybody else. I'm honored, and I know we have some images of NFL players to put up. But before I get into Alex real quick, I've been taking notes on what you guys have been saying, and I just wanted to clarify there was a photo of Jim Londos on the and some basketball players, and people might get confused by that because for a while the National Hellenic Invitational Basketball Tournament was renamed the Londos Invitational. Jim Londos was, gave back to the Greek community. It lent his name to the tournament. He helped raise funds for the tournament. So they renamed it the Londos Invitational for about a decade, perhaps back in the 40s, I believe it was, or 40s or 50s. Regardless, I just wanted to clarify that because the wrestling and the Londos and the basketball might confuse some people, but also there was a photo of Harry Agganis, and honored to be on the panel with Nick Tsiotos, who is the author of the definitive book on the Golden Greek on Harry Agganis. Again, another little plug for Nick, but there's a photo of Harry and one of his Red Sox teammates. I don't know if we can get that back up on the screen, but that teammate said that Harry was the greatest athlete in the history of the Boston Red Sox franchise up to that point, which is not, I guess, too surprising considering that Harry was well on his way to an incredible football career. But I just wanted to mention that. So, their upper right-hand corner is Alex Karras. So Alex, this football family, incredible. 3 brothers all played in the National Football League, and they had 2 cousins that also played in the football, family, 5 family members, all from the same family who played in the National Football League. Certainly without even referring to any type of internet search, I think we can safely assume that that is some kind of a record. Nobody has even come close to approaching that kind of a record. But Alex Karras, what an incredible, colorful figure in the history of sports, period, not just Greek Americans, just one of the most colorful characters, period. He was inducted into the National Football League Hall of Fame, I should say the Pro Football Hall of Fame, of which George Veras is the executive director, former Cleveland Browns executive, former Jimmy the Greek producer on CBS, George Veras. But Alex was inducted posthumously in 2020, so just a little over 2 years ago. And he was a defensive tackle for the Detroit Lions. And he's credited with 100 career sacks. Now, this is unofficial because in those days they kept sketchy records on those records. But Alex Karras at 100 sacks, I believe there are only 6 or 7 players in the history of the National Football League who have ever achieved 100 sacks in their career. Alex Karras is one of them. He had a Pro Bowl career for 12 years in which all 12 of them were with the Detroit Lions. He was a 3-time first team All-Pro, 6-time second team All-Pro, 4-time Pro Bowl. And after his career, he was a Monday Night Football commentator for 3 seasons in the booth in near the infancy of this craze that became Monday Night Football that swept the nation and has become such an iconic franchise. Alex Karras was one of the 3 in the booth. As you all know, the late great Howard Cosell was pretty much the face of that franchise. But Alex was the son of a Greek immigrant by the name of Dr. George Karras. His father was a doctor from Chelios, okay? And Alex later went on after his career. He had a career in television and film. He played in the film Blazing Saddles, in which he's famous for punching a horse and knocking out the horse. Just some trivia for you. But he also starred as George Papadopoulos, the adoptive father of Webster on ABC, the ABC sitcom Webster, played a very serious role in that. He was kind of the straight man, and it was a great role model for kids, as a matter of fact. Webster's adoptive father adopted this African American child who was the star of the show, Webster, and was one of the most popular and highly rated sitcoms in television history, probably, but along that, he later, his second wife, by the actress by the name of Susan Clark, Alex Karras and her co-starred, well, I shouldn't say co-starred, but they had a role in the film Victor Victoria with Julie Andrews and James Garner, 2 of the biggest names in Hollywood. Of course, you said the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He was a member of the Centennial class, but he, it's said here, before his NFL career, he signed a contract. He was a professional wrestler. There's that history that Nick talked about, the great Greeks, as a professional wrestler. Before his career, he earned $25,000 during a 6-month stint before he went to play for the Detroit Lions. So, it goes on and on. I mean, Alex had an incident with gambling where he admitted to betting on NFL, and him and poor Paul Hornung, the golden boy from Green Bay, were both suspended for 1 season. They came back and they played again, and Alex led an exemplary life. One time he was asked to flip the coin before a game by the referee, and he kindly informed the referee that he does not gamble, which was a funny little line. But again, one of the great colorful characters in the history of sports in general. The Karras family, 5 members played in the NFL. This is an incredible story.
Harry, thank you. It's time to tie in AHEPA a little bit. Two points. Alex was first of all, he was unblockable. I mean, they said double team, they couldn't stop him. In the NFL, he was actually a finalist for the Heisman Trophy. Very rare for a lineman from the University of Iowa. It's always quarterbacks and running backs. That's how dominant he was. But he actually went to Greece for an Olympics, a sort of a Hellenic Olympics, and he was sponsored by AHEPA, and he did it, and he threw the shot put at a competition in Athens on behalf of AHEPA. And let me jump ahead a little bit. Last Sunday, with great pride, I watched every snap of the Cincinnati Bengals because Ted Karras Jr., Alex's great nephew, was the center for the Bengals. Ted was the winner of the Agganis Award from AHEPA 2 years ago. And Ted said to me that his family, the Karras family, credits the Order of AHEPA for their father, grandfather, and uncle, Alex, finally getting his due in being inducted in 2020 after 3 decades of not being inducted into the Canton Hall of Fame. AHEPA had lobbied for that, and unsolicited, Ted Karras said that his family thanks AHEPA. I think that's a segue into the next guest, the next panelist, Chris Atsavas, our friend. Chris is the Supreme Athletic Director for the Order of AHEPA. He's going to give us an overview on the different athletic programs. Chris is one of those Swiss Army knives. He may have a title, but he's in the trenches. He's the psalty at his church. He's the basketball coach at his church. He's the church athletic director. He's District 13 athletic director. So, but he's also our athletic director. So in a sense, I'm pleased to introduce my boss, Chris Atsavas, to give us a bit of an overview on the different things that AHEPA does in the field of athletics. Chris?
Greg, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And Lou, thank you for having us today. And thank you to the esteemed panelists too. You know, everybody that is on the screen today is actually a member of our, I think, crown jewel of our AHEPA athletic program, which is our AHEPA Sports Hall of Fame. So other than the Hall of Fame that I'll get to in a minute, AHEPA has always been known for hosting basketball tournaments. There have been some very prominent basketball players that played throughout the AHEPA domain and the Sons of Pericles, some dominant Ypsilanti teams that went on and traveled and played in various countries, you know, especially in Greece and along in many of the other states here. AHEPA also has a very prominent golf program. Currently, a very prominent bowling program as well. Those are the three sports that we currently actively participate in. I mentioned before, the crown jewel, I believe, of the AHEPA athletic program is the Hall of Fame. And, you know, Greg being our moderator, everybody knows, you know, Greg and how he doesn't like accolades, but Greg has been the curator of this Hall of Fame program for many years, along with our scholarship committee chairperson and our awards chairman. So Greg doesn't like accolades, but, you know, Greg, you've done an amazing job in promoting athletics throughout the AHEPA domain, both on the national side and also on the local side. Some of the other programs that AHEPA Athletics supports, we supported the Greek national baseball team that were a combination of baseball players from throughout the country got together, formed the national team and competed. Also, we created a scholarship and scholar athlete program in order to hopefully create future superstar Greek athletes, helping high school kids move on into college. And we also sponsored many individual athletes and tried to get them some support to get them to the next level. Currently, we are working on trying to get 2 amateur Greek golfers that we met in the summer when we went to Costa Navarino and played in our first AHEPA Cup. We met 2 young Greek amateur golfers, and our goal is to raise money to try to get them to qualify for the DP European Tour or bring them here to the United States so they can try and qualify for the Corn Ferry Tour as well. What I'm most proud about regarding the athletic program is we were just not dominated by the 4 major sports that everybody is familiar with. Yes, inside of our Hall of Fame, we have many inductees, many very worthy inductees. But when you think about the Hall of Fame, you think about basketball players, you think about baseball players, you think about football players, and you think about hockey players. Those are the 4 big sports. But what I'm most proud about is in our Hall of Fame, we have bowlers, We have tennis players. We have swimmers and divers. We have boxers. We have those that excelled in track and field. Nick, you had mentioned wrestlers. We have wrestlers in our Hall of Fame. We even have referees, sports commentators in our Hall of Fame. We have soccer players, both men and both women. That's the thing that I'm most proud of, is the diversity that we've used as a committee and as selection to honor the Greek athletes. So I want to thank again, Lou, for hosting us today, and Gregory, thank you for all the hard work that you do in being the curator of what I think is the most impressive program inside the AHEPA, and that's our Hall of Fame. So thanks, everyone.
Chris, thank you. You know, the overused phrase, labor of love, this is truly a labor of love, and especially dealing every day with people like Nick and Charlie and Terry and yourself. Thank you. Let me just touch upon the Hall of Fame for a second. It was started in 1974. And for a while, we felt we were in competition with the Italian Americans as to the first ethnic Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, we did some research maybe we shouldn't have, and it appears that they nipped us out by 1 year. So we are the second oldest ethnic Hall of Fame, athletic Hall of Fame in the country. And in these 46 years, we have 175 inductees. Every year we induct 4 or 5. The great class, the first inaugural class of 75 was 10, because there was a backlog, and that was people like Agganis and Landis, and you'll hear about Milt Pappas and Lou Seropoulos and others. But we've inducted 175 since then. Every year, 4 or 5. There's a rigorous process. We have 20 Hall of Fame selection committee voters from throughout the country, very diverse, and it's objective, it's transparent. There's no politics. We induct the very best, and some excellent athletes haven't made the cut. A particular note, and what I'm proud of, is in the last decade, we have grown the number of females, as Chris mentioned, in the Hall of Fame from 2, Leah Poulos, the great Olympic skater, and Diana Nyad, who's famous for swimming across the channel in England. We now have grown in the last 8 years from 2 to 11. Virtually every year we have a female. We've also expanded the eligibility for the Hall of Fame in the last 3 or 4 years to overseas, in recognition of the growing domain of the AHEPA to Europe and Greece and Australia. So we're very proud of that, and Chris touched upon it. We're also proud that we give out the Chelios Award every year to the most outstanding collegiate athlete. 2 years ago, that was George Karlaftis, who now is menacing backfields as a rookie this past year for the Kansas City Chiefs. And you'll be able to see him Sunday. Any event, Chris mentioned that in the Hall of Fame, we also honor what we call supporters and contributors. It's media personalities, it's owners, sportscasters. And the expert in that would be none other than Charlie Theokas, because frankly, he probably received a few paychecks from some of those owners. Charlie is the most preeminent Greek-American athletic administrator in the history of college and professional sports. Real, talk about a resume. Athletic director at Temple University under the great Greek-American president, Peter Sampras. Athletic director of the Atlantic 10 Conference. General manager of the New Jersey Nets with Dr. J, Julius Erving, that won the American Basketball Association crown. General manager of the New Jersey Generals, signing Herschel Walker under that short-lived United States Football League. Known by every single every single administrator in the country, well revered. And we're thrilled to have Charlie Theokas as one of our panelists and as a member of the AHEPA Athletic Hall of Fame. Charlie, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the media personalities that you've crossed paths with and owners?
Greg, and thank you for those kind words. And again, thank everybody, Lou, for having us here, and of course, the rest of the panel. As I look around, I think I might be the senior person on the panel. Is that accurate, Greg? Senior by age, I'm talking about, the reality. And that gives me a prerogative, a right. And I can get emotional, I might. And I can tell stories, and I might. And that's the way it is. I have to tell you, and I'm going to try to get through it. Harry Agganis died on June 27th. Happens to be my birthday. Happens to be, I'm in Lowell, Massachusetts, looking up at, walking downtown on my birthday. And in those days, they had blimps, big old blimps. However that worked, and they were news blimps, and there were crawls underneath it. And I looked up and I saw Harry Agganis die. It's pretty heavy. And you know what's heavy about it? It's heavy about it because up until that, all my buddies, we'd go to school and say, what did Harry do against the Senators yesterday? Oh, he got 2. Oh, he went for the caller. Oh, he hit a home run. He was very much a part of our lives. But more importantly, and it's a segue into how I'm going to finish this whole thing up, Greg, is that became, as a Greek American, we were into not necessarily the Red Sox, but more importantly, our guy, Harry Agganis. That's very serious. And but I hope when people leave this visit this afternoon, that they get a feel and bring back the feeling about ourselves and what is Hellenism and what is Greeks. That's important in life. I think it made me whatever I am, and I don't know what that is, but it's all good. It's all good when we can talk about, Harry Agganis and what he did and on and on and on. So those are the nice things. We can talk about athletes. We can talk about Nicky Gallis, who went to Greece and knocked them dead. He was just not an ordinary athlete, but he was just one of many, many young Greek Americans from here who went across the big ocean and did credit to all of us in Greek, as we know, won the big cup. And we could talk about, there are so many athletes, Billy Lowe's and Milt Pappas and all these people. But I'd like to touch, if I would, as a former administrator. I played a little bit, and I was good enough to play, but not good enough to really be like our dear departed Alex Karras. But I was in there. I put a helmet on a few times. But I was also an administrator, and I was so proud to be an administrator and get involved. I can remember, as another little anecdote, I can remember being assigned the responsibility of the athletic directorship at Temple University, as you said, under Peter Sampras. And I wasn't there 2 days when I got a phone call from UCLA. I didn't know anybody at UCLA at the time. Just didn't know anybody. And then talking to my secretary, she said, there's a gentleman on the phone named Peter Dallas. I don't know Peter Dallas. Guess what? Peter Dallas happens to be in the Hall of Fame, happens to be Greek, happens to have seen my name and said, let me call a fellow Greek and say, welcome. I think we're losing a little bit of that, Greg, and I want to bring that back in my emotional state. I want us to recognize those of us who are out there. Bob Costas. Bob Costas is an amazing human being. And we say, oh, Bob Costas is not good. No, he's just not a nice Greek guy. He's a guy who's part of the AHEPA family. And yet he should be remembered and you should all be proud of him. You and I, recently got involved with Spirodetis. Spirodetis is a young guy. For those of you who don't know Spirodetis, he's probably one of the 4 or 5 upcoming bright, shiny stars who does football and basketball, and he's a big commentator. He's a good one. We have, to my knowledge, we have at least 3 owners of professional sports teams, professional teams, starting way back with Peter Angelos when he had the Baltimore baseball team for years and years. And we took him I don't know if we took him for granted. Enough people, unfortunately, took him for granted. But presently, we have many he owns this. Well, Ted, incidentally, he's a fellow Llewellyn. I happen to be from Lowell, Massachusetts originally. But anyway, Ted owns the basketball team. He owns the arena. Very proud Greek. We have him in our Hall of Fame. So we've touched a lot of other areas other than the athletic area itself. I mean, the players on the field, and we shouldn't forget them. As recent as a couple of years ago, Alexander Pappas, who's the general manager of the Atlanta Braves. This is big time, and I feel proud. We should all feel proud that we have someone in those areas and in that capacity. We're very proud when we see a United States person who's running for Senate or who's running for Congress. Forget making it. We have people who have made it. And it's kind of neat. I think the person with the Detroit basketball team with the Little Caesars people, I think they're part of us, and we just need to know and talk about all those people, Greg, and not just take them for granted. Somebody talked about Judge Veras. We're talking about running the Olympics for the national television. This is a big, successful Greek American who we should know about and talk about. And what it would do, and this is a segue again into what I'm going to talk about, Greg, if we talk about it, whether sports are right or wrong, whether it's way over the top, and I think it's way over the top in some instances, but everybody talks about sports. Your banquet and our banquet at the AHEPA convention and all of the other meetings, it's not an accident that when I stood up there and was recognized and honored by you and your committee at the time to be part of the Hall of Fame, and I stood up and I looked at close to 500 people, and they stayed till the end. Why? Because sports has that ability to keep people together and to have people talking about. See men and women who've accomplished things and who dove we have a soccer player from right here in Trenton who received what we know to be the Heisman Trophy Award in college soccer. That's not an accident, but we don't talk about it enough anymore the way I think we should. I mean, I can remember I played, Greg, getting back to Harry Agganis, and I still have the program. I played in the very, very first annual Harry Agganis basketball tournament. What an honor! What a thrill! Forget the guys from Chicago, Ypsilanti. I think they come in with all those ringers and beaters, but that's all right. They're entitled. It was all good stuff, but it was being a Greek American, talking about Greek Americans, being proud of being Greek Americans and what it did. Now, I've had an experience through my athletic life and the people I've met, the people I've touched, and just go on and on. And again, we don't have enough time to hear all my stories, but I did, wherever I went, however I did it, and I know I'm old enough to go back over all the years, I touched all those people. I touched the churches. And it started when I was young, being born and raised in Lowell, which is, was a very traditional Greek American community, 30,000 Greeks in those days, but we'll get into that later, hopefully. But I touched all those things, and it made for a difference when we started to go on in life and think about what we can do. So, Greg, I'll leave you with that one. Everybody's taken enough time. I hope our people who are listening out there get a little better feel for what we're trying to do. We can talk about Londis, and I'll talk about 100 other guys who that wall isn't big enough if we really want to build a Greek American wall. We should be proud of what we have, and we have a forum. I believe if you have a microphone in front of you, you should be able to tell a story and tell a good story. Let's all tell a story. Let's not hibernate. Let's not hide from the fact. I had occasion recently to be recognized by my high school in a nice situation, and I stood up and I can tell you, and I'm proud of it. I talked about the Greek community. I talked about the table of Athens who were at that meeting. There were 250 people, and I'm proud of that. I would hope that we can keep that going somehow and spread the word that we're all trying to do here this afternoon, and just go on and have some fun with it, because it ain't bad. That's the way I look at it. It's a pretty nice topic. And Greg, I rambled a little bit, and I try not to flip around, but go ahead. Back to you, buddy.
Listen,
Gregory, I'm sorry, before you start, because this is a fascinating discussion. I'm sure those who are listening on YouTube have questions. Can you just give them your email address in case they want to send you some questions?
Sure, please do so. So it's STAMOSATTY, 10 consecutive letters, Stamos attorney, at sbcglobal.net. So Charlie, to answer your point, we're just getting warmed up. Okay, we got a lot to talk about. I know, for example, I think it's important that I couldn't call Charlie between 9:30 and 12 today, as well as Chris, because Chris was the psalty at his church. Charlie was singing in the choir for over 50 years. And so I had to wait. I know what's important to all of us here. So number one, Alex Anthopoulos, Charlie, is in our Hall of Fame. The Atlanta Braves won the World Series 2 years ago, and we immediately inducted him as a general manager into our Hall of Fame. But I recall with fondness when Charlie was inducted in 2014, I believe, in Orlando. And in my capacity, as Chris alluded, running the athletic luncheon, I guess I've heard about 5, maybe 70 or 80 speeches. And, they're all wonderful, except that I'll never forget Charlie's, because he looked at the audience and repeated, "I am proud to be Greek." And he kept on repeating it and starting with it and ending with it. And he encapsulates what we're all about. Charlie alluded to Peter Angelos. I think it's noteworthy to note this, that as we recall, Greece hosted the Athens Olympics in 2004. As the host country, it was able to field a team or an athlete in every sport, whether they qualified or not. So in 2002, Greece realized they had no baseball fields and they had no baseball players. And they reached out to Peter Angelos, and to his eternal credit, he designated the head of his farm teams to find 25 Greek Americans to play for Greece. And they pulled it off. From bonus babies like Nick Markakis, to veterans like Pappas, the catcher, to people like New York Yankees, Bellinger, the father of Cody Bellinger. And I was so proud to be there to see the Greek national baseball team play in the Olympics, all because of Peter Angelos. Anyway, we're going to round table it a little bit. This has been a lot of fun. I'm going to throw out some subjects and topics, and I want everyone quickly to react. I mean, we're going to run out of time. So let's talk about basketball, something that's, I guess, my true love. If we had to pick an all-time 5, very quickly, Terry, give me a couple names. Who would be on your all-time 5, a starting 5 of basketball?
Well, we have a lot of basketball.
Pick your 5. You just got to pick. You got to give me a couple names.
Okay, I'm not going to go into luck thing. I got to put Kurt Rambis in there from the LA Lakers. He won 4 NBA titles with Magic Johnson and the Showtime Lakers, even though he was the workman, carrying the lunch pail on the team and doing all the dirty work. He won 4 rings. So number 2 would be, I guess, Costa Koufos. Are you seeing me on the screen, by the way? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Anyway, yeah, Costa Koufos. Who is in the lower left of the screen. He played with 4 teams, the Jazz, T-Wolves, Nuggets, Grizzlies, and Kings. He started for a little bit, averaged his best year, he averaged 8 points per game in 22 minutes for the Nuggets. But then you've got,
All right, good enough.
I guess,
Good enough.
Lucharopoulos from the Celtics.
Let's let Nick handle Lucharopoulos because he's from his neck of the woods. You gave us 2 good ones. I would agree. Nick, why don't you give us a name or 2?
No, I would definitely go with Lucharopoulos. He played with Bill Russell, who just passed away. He had He had 2 championships at Kentucky, I believe, in '54, and then they were the number 1 rate. They didn't lose a game their freshman year, and he also had 2 championships, I believe, with the Celtics. So he's probably one of the all-time winners. And also, very few people know Lucharopoulos was an All-American football player as well. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I would go with Psaropoulos. Koufos was tremendous. I thought he had a very good career. I saw him play. Nick Kalathis is another one, another very, very good player.
Good enough.
I'll let somebody
All
else,
right. So let me be quick with this. One of the AHEPA conventions, it was in New Orleans. Costa Koufos was our Agganis winner, and we thought he couldn't show up because of the summer requirements playing for the Memphis Grizzlies. He showed up and he drove up unexpectedly, called me an hour before and says, I'm going to drive there from Memphis. Showed up in some fancy car. My daughter was going crazy and just wowed the crowd. He had the Greek boys following around for a day and a half. I mean, a true Hellene, Costa Koufos. How about Charlie? Can you come up with a name or two?
Well, boy, George Caffin, God rest his soul, but my Long Island guy, who became a pretty good dentist, incidentally, when it's all over. And he was a legitimate big-time player in those days. Hard to compare what those days are versus today. It's like Michael Jordan better than we can go round and around. But and Nicky, I go back to Nick Gallis. On Nick, it comes out of Seton Hall and didn't make it with the Celtics, although they liked him a little undersized, whatever that means. Went over to Greece and made he's just, as we all know, a big time superstar hero over there, and then because they won a whole bunch of games and won the big one. So you have to think about those people when you're thinking, Greg. At least those 2 people.
Yeah. Listen, I would say Nick Gallis would be my first choice, only because he truly is the only Greek American in the Naismith Hall of Fame. He was inducted in 2017. We had inducted him in the AHEPA Hall of Fame a couple years before. And to Nick's credit, he's a little bit reclusive in Greece. To his credit, he invited AHEPA to be there to witness his induction. It's really nice when we honor someone and they remember us. And George Kaftan, at Holy Cross, I'm sorry, Charlie. George Kaftan is the only Greek American to be named the MVP of the NCAA Final Four.
There you go.
Holy Cross won the national championship. Chris, any thoughts?
I was going to kind of agree with Charlie. Some of the basketball players that had the biggest impact are not the players that played in the NBA. They're actually the players that went overseas and played in Greece and kind of turned that program into the program that it currently is. And, Nick Gallis, obviously, a name that's legendary, but even some of the local stars that, like from here in Chicago, Kirk Vitas, that went and played for Panathinaikos and took them to championships as well. I mean, basketball in Greece has really come a long way. And I think that, we owe it to a lot of the prominent Greek players that chose to go to Greece instead of coming here and either playing in the, minor secondary leagues or even in the NBA. So they kind of did that on their own. And to me, that's very important.
And this is really the time that we really need to pat AHEPA on the back. In the 70s and 80s, I would say in that 2 decades, at least every other year, AHEPA sent an all-star team, to Greece. And many feel that was really, truly the introduction of basketball to Greece, where it's, they're crazy about basketball there. And we've had a hiatus of that. In 2008, Nick and I were involved, and Chris, in bringing a team there. And it was just a real big hit at the AHEPA convention. We brought 10 Division I Greek American basketball players to Greece to play the Greek junior national team. We're coached by Villanova basketball coach Steve Lapis and Southern New Hampshire coach Stan Spiro. We beat the junior national team. And most importantly, as a result of that, I think 6 of those players ended up playing either for the Greek national team or professionally. AHEPA opened the door for them. They would not have even been known. All right, let's go to hockey. If you look at the Mount Rushmores, Terry.
Greg,
Yes.
Can I just add something, a couple things real quick, just in the last 20 years? I mean, you've had guys like Vasily Spanoulis with the Rockets and Nick Mantis back from the 60s, played with the Minneapolis Lakers before they moved to Los Angeles. Grand Rapids Griffins, I think it was the name of the team, and the Chicago Zephyrs, 3 different professional teams. He's a guy from Indiana, played in the national or NHIBT also. And then you had a guy by the name of Antonis Fotis with the Grizzlies, who's a 6'8". He could dribble like a guard. Came on like gangbusters. I thought he was going to stick around for a while, but he was an entertaining player. But, recently, Georgios Kalitsakis, who played with the Thunder a year ago and averaged 17 points in 10 games. Now he's with Panathinaikos, but this guy put up 28 points against the Lakers. Jackie Gamelos, last one, 40 points per game in her senior year of high school, averaged 40 points per game. She's played in the WNBA and overseas.
Let's remember, this is the Hellenic American athlete. We're not talking about the Greek freak. That's why we haven't talked about Spanoulis, and we could be here till tomorrow. Let's segue Let's segue to hockey. Let's just talk about the great Chris Chelios. Terry, can you give us 40 seconds on Chris?
Yes. Chris is the Iron Man of the NHL. He played until he was 46 years old. He's a 2 or 3 time Olympic gold medalist, I believe, at least 2. Okay, he played on the Olympic bobsled team, also little known to a lot of the Greek Olympic bobsled team. He played for 3 different NHL franchises, won a Stanley Cup with the Montreal Canadiens, played for the Chicago Blackhawks for perhaps the majority of his career, and then the Red Wings. He won a couple more Stanley Cups. He's got 3 cups. He's one of the, Hall of Famer and Chicago treasure. And, I had a chance to interview him years ago on the ice during a practice, went into the locker room. He's very, reserved. His teammates were razzing him, by the way, but Chris, he's kind of a serious guy. He used to pal around with Dennis Rodman. Those guys like to go out and party, but Chris was all business when it came to hockey, and he kept incredible shape for him to be able to play until the age of 46. And these hockey players, they're in the league at 19, 20 years old. That is just a testament to one of the most incredible personal trainer. I want his personal trainer basically, and to his work ethic off the ice. In training, one of the greatest defensemen in the history of the National Hockey League.
Absolutely. So listen, we're running into some time issues. I really want to just get some real sound bites here. Let's talk about the Olympics. I think we need to highlight Tom Pappas, who was the #1 decathlete for 4 years for the United States, represented the United States. We have the Spinakas twins, who boxed with Muhammad Ali for the U.S. Olympic team. But in particular, when you think of the iconic Olympians, is there ever been a greater diver than Greg Louganis, 2-time gold medalist? Let me give you a quick vignette. When we inducted him into the Apple Hall of Fame, frankly, someone said, gee, is he really Greek? He was adopted. He was born Filipino. And I said to Greg, Greg, what do I say to that? And he laughed. He said, Greg, same first name. Let me say this, Greg. He said, I was adopted by, I can't remember his mom and dad's first names. as an infant. They were Greek Americans. And he said, they taught me to be Greek. They raised me as their son. They were my mom and dad. He said, I was raised Greek. I am Greek. And to me, that was just a beautiful sentiment. Greatest Olympic diver in the history, Greg Louganis. Let's talk about football. Besides Alex Karras, Harry Agganis, Nick, can you just give us literally 20 seconds on Bilitasis and Fred Smirlis?
Well, Bilitasis, of course, was fantastic at the University of Texas. The Texas Longhorns were really just about on every other week on national TV. And Fred Smirlis, of course, 14 years in the NFL, has played more games at middle than anybody, more than Curly Culp. He should be in the Hall of Fame. I truly believe that. He also was 100 wins and 0 losses in high school as a wrestler. And then I want to segment into just quickly into baseball. I want to hold this book up. This is Baseball's Golden Greeks, okay? Written by a Greek from Greece who came to America and loved the national pastime, 1934 to 1974. Some of the great names, Milt Pappas, Harry Agganis, Gus Triandos, so many great athletes, the Bax's brothers, okay? This is a good book. Anybody wants to go learn a little bit about baseball between those years. We really had a high percentage, considering we were only a small minority, but we had a very high percentage that were playing professional baseball between 1934 and 1974. Great book by Diamandis Zervos, Baseball's Golden Greeks. And I just wanted to just say just one more quick thing about Harry Agganis, because this is a social show as well, because I've seen Lou's show where he's worked with the African American community. In 1946, they won the national championship, okay, at the Miami's Orange Bowl. In 47, the team was invited back to play again in the national championship in, I believe, Mississippi. And there were 2 African American players, Tommy Smith, and the other one was Paul Pittman. And Bill Joyce, the classical coach, football coach, said, I'm going to leave it up to Harry again. He says, Harry, what are we going to do? Are we going to go? The whole team can go, but the 2 African-American players can't go. He turned around to the coach and said, Coach, you know what? If they can't go, we're not going. So they turned down going to the national championship as well. So he made a great social statement then. And the last thing I want to say is just a couple of things is, number one, we have so many great Greek-American women out there. And as a matter of fact, Anastasia Batikis is in this book for the Racine Bells way back in the 40s playing. Diamandi had them in there. We have so many great Greek-American women, female athletes, and I want to bring it down to the local level. And I want to speak a few words in Greek as well. Γιατί, όλοι οι Έλληνες που έχουν έρθει εδώ στην Αμερική σαν μετανάστες, τα παιδιά τους βγαίνουν πρώτα στα μαθήματα, αλλά πάντοτε προσπαθάγαμε να βγούμε πρώτοι και στο αθλητισμό. Και νομίζω οποιαδήποτε περιφέρεια της Αμερικής που μένεις, ή στην Καλιφόρνια, στο New Hampshire, στο Massachusetts, στη Νέα Υόρκη, στο New Jersey, παντού. Ο Έλληνας αθλητής που έπαιζε football ή μπάσκετ ή baseball ή στη πάλι, αυτό το παιδί που ήταν σε αυτό το μικρό χωριό ή πόλη, αυτός άφησε όνομα όχι μόνο για την οικογένεια του, για όλο τον ελληνισμό. And I just want to translate that the local Greek American, no matter where it was, whether it was in California, whether it was in Lowell, Massachusetts, whether it was New Jersey, New York, in Brooklyn, wherever it was, that local athlete, whether, as a matter of fact, Greg, you've met a couple as well in Rhode Island as well, in Newport, that local athlete, that Greek American athlete, male or female, when they got their name in the paper, they represented the whole community. And the most important thing was to never embarrass your family or the community. And I truly believe at the local level, Birmingham, Alabama, I have so many friends through AHEPA. Those Greek American athletes helped put us on the map and showed the type of ethos we had and the type of arete we had as Greek Americans and brought us to the forefront. I think that it was a pivotal role. Every single high school athlete that ever put on a uniform in the United States really represented the Greek American community in a very good way and helped us become prominent citizens like we are as well. So I just want to say that.
Including you, your brother Chris.
I'm just saying everybody. Yeah.
And many of us. couple more things and let's try to wrap it up. Baseball. I just want to touch base with a couple people. I'm going to give you one name. I'm going to ask everyone to give a name in literally 15 seconds. Nick Markakis, just retired, 3-time Gold Glover for the Atlanta Braves, All-Star, has all kinds of records. He's in our Hall of Fame. Eric Karros still holds the Dodgers home run record, Rookie of the Year in Major League Baseball. Throw out a couple of names. Charlie, Chris, come on.
Yeah, I got a quick one. I remember when I was trying to play baseball as a young guy, I was a catcher. Not too bad. Everybody was talking about Yogi Berra as a catcher. I was talking about Gus Triandos. That's my man. And I remember trying to emulate Gus, big guy, look Greek, whatever look Greek means. And I would follow him very closely. So he was certainly a prominent, legitimate, big time Major League Baseball player.
Yeah, for me, being from Chicago, obviously Milt Pappas, who played many and pitched many games for the Chicago Cubs, growing up watching him, and to your point, Nick, it kind of touches the heart as, being proud to be Greek and just watching somebody excel in a sport. So
Let's do this. Let's do this. We talked about the Mount Rushmore, and let's call it the Mount Olympics. We know what that means. That means the iconic images, the visages, the face that you could picture. And we started out by talking about Jim Londos, Harry Agganis, Alex Karras, and maybe there's room up there for one or two more. People like Chris Chelios, of course. And I'm going to save what I think the best for last. But let's do this. Everyone's talking about LeBron's going to break Kareem's record. And who was the GOAT in basketball? The greatest of all time, GOAT. And that is the subject of talk shows constantly. I'm going to say, who is the Greek GOAT, the GGOAT? Let's go around. If you had to pick the iconic Greek American athlete, just give me 20 seconds why. Let me start out with Terry Poulos.
Thank you. And again, thank you for hosting this panel. It's been a lot of fun. Before I talk about Milt Pappas, we need to mention Pete Poulos, NFL Hall of Famer. I mean, this guy was one of the most prolific tight end catching the ball before they threw the ball. He had numbers.
Is he your GOAT?
No, he's not my GOAT, but we have to mention, and Pete Sampras, probably the third best tennis player in the history of tennis. Can't leave the show without mentioning them. My GOAT is Milt Pappas, 209 career wins, 164 losses, 3.40 ERA, 1,728 strikeouts. He's not quite Hall of Fame numbers, came within one lousy umpire call of a perfect game, which the umpire, that ball was, if it was 1 inch off the strike zone, you give it to him.
All right,
that's
Chris,
my GOAT.
Chris, no, we don't want runner-ups. Chris and Atsavas. Who is your GOAT?
Yeah, my GOAT has to be Pete Sampras, at one time, the most dominant player in an individual sport like tennis. And, every time you looked on TV and watched tennis and watched tournaments, you always saw Pete Sampras climbing and getting into the final and winning many championships. So Pete Sampras is my guy.
How about you, Lou? Give us your GOAT.
Listen, since Harry Agganis was from Longanyuko, and that's a village not far from the village that I was born when I came here as a child, I have to go with him, based on regional things and just pride.
Absolutely. Charlie?
Well, I'm not a tennis player. I know about. I can read and write. I can read records. Pete Sampras, by far, in my opinion, individually is the man. Having said that, Greg, I just have to go back and talk about Harry Agganis. I mean, the guy. When you talk about what he did in such a short period of time in two major sports, and his impact at a young age for a short period of time. If he's not the GOAT with a capital G, I'm going to make him a GOAT with a small G.
Okay. Nick, can you no runner-ups, Nick? Give us your go.
Straight out, Harry Agganis. Professional baseball. That fall, he was ready to go into professional football. He was ready to sign, and he would have been, you don't know how great he would have been, but I truly believe he would have been one of the all-time greats at quarterback. In addition to that, I'm just going to give you one quick story.
No,
Johnny
no,
Most,
no,
quick.
no more
Johnny
stories.
Most was watching a basketball, a one-on-one at the Boston Garden. It was Bill Sharman playing some guy in shoes. He walked over to see who Sharman was playing. The Celtic beat the guy 21-20. He was in shoes, just in his fatigues. It was Harry Agganis. Greatness in baseball, greatness in basketball, greatness in football. Hands down, Aristotle George Agganis.
Listen, Nick. I think you should write a book about Harry.
I
Oh,
did
you
with Andy
did.
DeBillis.
You did.
You
Listen, I
did.
did.
You did. Any event, I mean, the sadness, I called the life of Harry the Greek tragedy. In my opinion, there's so much we'll never know, that it was potential unrealized, taken from us much, much too soon. Our beloved Governor Michael Dukakis said to me once that his father was a doctor in Boston, and he asked his dad, what happened with Harry? How did he die at 25? And his father said, I will never talk about that. He said, that is a tragedy for the medical profession. It shouldn't have happened. He should not have died at age 25. So we'll never quite know. But I mean, just the legacy of Harry is iconic. What was in his heart, as much as his feet and his fingers. I would echo some people. My goat is Pete Sampras. And we could talk about, the Louganises and the Chelioses, and they were at the top of their profession. But for a decade, he was the best tennis player in the world. 14 Grand Slams. He held the title for years. Number one at the end of the year, 6 consecutive years. It's never been done. And I just think, as Chris said, he reached the top of an individual sport. And to me, he rounds out the Mount Rushmore. And in my opinion, I call him the first among equals. This has been delightful. I don't know how we can end it other than having selected our goal and thanking Lou.
Let me come up with some thoughts of how we can end it, because this has been a fascinating, for me, it's been a fascinating discussion, actually, not only on the sports side, but actually people discussing where they're from, what Hellenism meant to them, what it meant growing up as a Hellene in the United States of America, how the athletes affected their particular lives. And to a certain degree, it started to bring almost tears to my eyes also. So the way I'd like to wrap it up, if it's okay with everyone, and we can do it one by one, is just give me your thoughts, each one of you, and we'll start with you, Gregory, if you can, about just where you were from, your family, and what Hellenism has meant to you, because I think it's very important, because you all touched on that aspect, that important aspect. And I think, quite frankly, this particular discussion is a discussion we should have again, because this has been an amazing event as far as I'm concerned, because a lot of the young people should be listening to what you're saying. And I'm sure they, in their age, no matter how young they are, that they're thinking the same things. And if they hear it from others, it further reinforces, what they have in themselves as being Hellenic Americans. Greg, would you like to start?
Well, I use the term that I've been blessed, and I use that with great sincerity. I don't say it lightly. I grew up in a house with anywhere from 12 to 14 people living in it, in a 9-room house. And it was the beehive of activity in a little mill town of Ansonia, Connecticut, near New Haven. I was there with my yaya, her 2 bachelor brothers, my great uncles. I had 3 bachelor uncles in the house that were all state athletes in Ansonia. My Uncle Ted, my late Uncle Ted, passed away during COVID, played basketball at UConn, and played in all the Greek tournaments, and played against George against Luceropoulos and all the Greeks that we mentioned. And I grew up, my cousins in Greece say, Greg, you're more Greek than we are. I grew up with such a love of Hellenism, as we all, so I don't need to expound on that. It's really in my heart, and it's really driven, and really, really every decision I've made in life is really in homage to my ancestors. It was a remarkable house. The doors were never locked. There wasn't even a key. And there was always something going on and some game to go to. And they were known as the Greeks. And all my friends know if there's a Greek athlete, they call me up and tell me about it. So it's been a great ride.
Gregory, thank you so much for being the moderator today. You added so much to this particular event. Nick, you had mentioned Lowell, certainly you mentioned Lynn, I'm sorry. And πάλι μίλαγε στα ελληνικά που μου άρεσε πάρα πολύ. Πέσε μας λίγο για τι πιστεύεις εσύ για τον ελληνισμό και πώς έχει βοηθήσει στη ζωή σου.
Well, I was very fortunate. My father came over in the 1950s και ήταν από τα Καλάβρητα και όλη η οικογένεια μου ήταν πάρα πολύ περήφανη γιατί πολεμήσαμε για χρόνια εναντίον των Τούρκων και many of my relatives died during the war of 1821 and they just put a statue in our village in Καλάβρητα, σκοτάνη Καλαβρίτων. Η μητέρα μου ήταν Σπαρτιάτα από το Βασαρά της Σπάρτης και μεγαλώσαμε σαν όλα τους άλλους εδώ, στο σπίτι ελληνικά, μιλάγαμε ελληνικά, ελληνικό σχολείο. Μάθαμε από τον πατέρα μου, είμαστε περήφανοι Έλληνες και when we came to Winthrop, Massachusetts, a little suburb, my brother and I were very fortunate. We got into sports and I captained my high school team. We were 17-1. My brother was 18-2 in basketball. We finished 35-3. We played together in college as well. We went to a couple NCAA tournaments at Suffolk University. And ο πατέρας μου μας έμαθε να είμαστε πάρα πολύ περήφανοι και να προσπαθήσουμε πάντοτε να κρατάμε τα αιτήματα των Ελλήνων και μας έμεσε τι είναι η αρετή, τι ήταν η αρχαία Ελλάδα και ότι είμαστε ευλογημένοι από το Θεό που γεννήθηκα εγώ Έλληνας και είμαι πολύ περήφανος.
Thank you so much for that, Nick. Charles, you actually caused it in my mind to have this discussion because of what you said, quite frankly. And Lowell, of course, came up in the discussion when you were speaking. And for those in the audience who don't know, in terms of Lowell, you had both, when you go to the cemetery in Lowell, there's a Greek section of the cemetery in Lowell, and there is a Dukakis buried there, there is an Agganis buried there. So Charles, tell us a little bit about, you started off with saying you have more gray hair than anyone else, but the reality is that you triggered this discussion, and thank you so much for talking about it.
Thank you, Lou. I'll be brief. First of all, I'm from Lowell, Massachusetts, and in those days we had 30,000 Greeks, 30,000 French, 30,000 Irish, and that composed the city. So we were as big as any community, Chicago or New York, or whatever. That's not the point. Youngest of 10 children, and I don't need to go into that. That's Lowell, Massachusetts. We were Greek. We were born Greek. Here's what I'd like to leave whoever might be listening with. I think you and all of you, and I'm looking at your pictures of your faces up there, and anybody who's listening has an obligation, because when we were born in a Greek environment. And it's nice to talk about, we're Greeks, and Nick talks about the Chelios. That's all good stuff. There is no more environment. The environment is gone. The only thing we have going for, two things. We have our church and we have the AHEPA as entities. We need to use these entities to promulgate, to continue and tell our stories. If we have a forum, and we do, and we all in our own lives have a forum, don't just talk to you and I and Greg as we talk on the phone. Let's tell our stories to people so they can be proud of what we talk about. And it's not BS, it's reality. But we can't just sit back. We need to use AHEPA. AHEPA could be the focal point. And what a wonderful thing everybody does in AHEPA from the top down. I think we need more, even if it costs money. Let's buy a link. Let's get some people who can write and just tell stories. Not to be boastful, but talk about Greek heritage and Greek Hellenism. And then it's going to help our churches, as we all know, have challenges today because they're in a waning environment. But that's okay. Change is not unhealthy. Change can be exciting if we use it properly, but we need to tell our stories and tell people how proud you are. And guess what? This is what really happened. We have an AHEPA creed that we all had and lived by. If you look at the AHEPA creed, it talks about telling stories. And we have a mission to do that as members of this particular group. And I'll leave you with that one, Coach, because I can go on and on about it, but I believe that. Let's all tell our stories with the kind of passion that I know we all have. And other people have, but don't realize that they need to tell their stories also.
Charles, thank you so much for that. Terry, tell us your story.
My story. Okay, Mike, we talk about all these professional players, but let's face it, it's like what, 0.0 something percent that ever make the pros, right? So my NBA, basketball is my sport. I worked for the NFL for 20 years. There it is, Greg. There's the Super Bowl ring.
I love it.
Right there. Yeah. So, 20 years in the NFL, but basketball is my love. That's my game. And we have the biggest Greek basketball tournament in the nation right here in Chicago. 94 years, the National Hellenic, I don't know, 84 years. I'm sorry, National Hellenic Invitational Basketball Tournament was run by Phil Bazais for so long. This is, guys, this is a networking group extraordinaire. I can't emphasize, your kid's not going to make the pros. I got news for you, okay? Bring them to these tournaments. AHEPA is closely involved. The NHIBT, the Agganis tournament in the Boston area. Your kids are going to meet lifelong friends that later in life they're going to do business with. This has been a jobs program. I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many kids got their start from this basketball tournament. I went to a Paul Vallis fundraiser the other night. It was filled with guys I played basketball with. I mean, this is about lifelong friendships, about career networking, about people you have a lot of commonality with. The faces light up when you see each other. Everybody wants to help each other. Sure, you have your exceptions. 99%, everybody there is pulling for each other, and their faces light up when you talk about, oh, did you see this Greek kid did this and that and that? It's a lot of fun. I can't emphasize it. The memories are irreplaceable. Bring your kids out. Please do them a favor. Do yourself a favor.
You're right, Terry.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Chris, your story, final thoughts?
Yeah, so I was blessed because I grew up in a family that was always focused on giving back. I was taught as a young boy to always volunteer, and not just being a volunteer, but being a servant, which I think everybody here on this panel kind of looks at themselves and has taken volunteerism to the next level. I watched my grandmother send away every single year for one young boy from the Chelios, bring that young boy from the Chelios to America. We hired that person stayed at our house. We hired that person in the family restaurant until that person made enough money to go out, rent his own apartment and start his own life. Then my grandmother would send for another and send for another year after year after year. So I was blessed to kind of grow up in that type of an environment. And I was taught at a very young age that volunteering and being a servant was important. I'm a product of athletics, especially AHEPA athletics. I joined AHEPA because of athletics. My dad was an avid bowler. I had 3 brothers. So my dad had hip surgery, stopped bowling, was sitting on the couch feeling sorry for himself because rehab wasn't going very well. So my brothers, we all got together and we formed our own bowling team, and we joined the AHEPA Bowling League. And then here I am now leading the AHEPA athletic program. My brother, currently the supreme vice president of AHEPA. So you can see that, we started from the local level and kind of progressed onto the national level. And that all came from the way we were brought up and the way the matriarch of our family, which was my grandmother, kind of taught us. So that's kind of my story. To this day, all I do is volunteer and serve, and I enjoy every minute of it.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, please, Greg.
Can I interrupt, Lou?
Of course, please.
First of all, this has been a wonderful Sunday afternoon to spend it. No one thought about putting TV on to watch some mediocre basketball game. We all had the ability to do whatever we do on a Sunday and then join dear friends. And through AHEPA and athletics, I have become a dear friend of Terry and Chris and Nick and Charlie and Lou. And it's remarkable. And my non-Greek friends are so envious of that. To say that I have a friend in Boston and Chicago and in Lowell and Jersey and New York, they marvel. So enough. We're all saying the same thing at this point, but I wanted to end it by saying thank you to you, Lou. This is remarkable what you do. I talked about the Swiss Army knife. That's Chris Atsavas. You're the deluxe Swiss Army knife.
I don't know about that.
Keep up this really, really wonderful webinar. And maybe if you want to talk about subjects, less important, like Cyprus or the Turkey or the problem in Eastern Mediterranean, we'll understand.
Listen, we're going to come back to this, by the way. We're going to come back to these type of discussions. And in terms of your non-Hellenic friends, okay, if they're Phil-Hellenes, okay, AHEPA is definitely for them. In other words, AHEPA was always for Hellenes and Phil-Hellenes. And for those in the audience who are listening, you can find out more information, obviously, about AHEPA on its website, ahepa.org. For the audience, on February the 19th, our next event will be on with American state legislators. So that event is going to be called American Bipartisan State Legislators and Their Effects on the East Mediterranean and Beyond. East Mediterranean, Greg. And then after that, on March the 5th, our next event will be on the legacy of the former King Constantine II of Hellas, and that'll be also a panel discussion. Thank you all for being here. Greg,
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you, Lou.
you were amazing. The panels were
Thank you.
amazing. Costa, let's end it with some images of these great athletic Hellenic Americans.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you, guys, and have a pleasant afternoon. Thank you for everything. You guys are the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lou.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
Lou. It was an honor. Thanks.
No, the honor was ours. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Harry. There's Poulos.
Terry, I have a PP host story that I'll do it on telephone one of these days.
Okay. Yeah. I had the original Sport magazine with him on the cover, but I gave it to Nick Louganis in Philadelphia because he's such an Eagles fan.
Yeah, that's a story.